Hey, welcome to the Art Condition Podcast, a weekly show that will discuss the business, community, and often undiscussed stress and mental health concerns of being a professional artist, or even a serious hobbyist. I'm Joby. I've been in the tattoo and illustration professions for 25 years. My co-host is Moose, a data analyst, social media manager, and art agent. If you enjoy the content, please consider visiting the Patreon page in the show notes to help support the effort. Or if that's not an option, please like, subscribe, leave a good review, or just share with your friends. And definitely go visit the links of our guests on this episode. Thanks for listening, and have a great day. Welcome to episode number 15. This one is a long one, but I beg you, please give it a listen. It's one of my favorites, and I think if you give it the time, it will be one of yours as well. Our guests are Daniel and Autumn, two artists working in the field of promotional art and commercial illustration. They have built solid, high-value careers on a specific set of skills, and we can learn an immense amount from their long years of experience as professional artists. We talk about what it's like in their industry, how it differs from other illustration jobs, what brought them to it, and what might attract others to doing that sort of work as well. From there, our conversation touches on a number of important topics. We talk about how they manage to work long hours and not only avoid burnout, but get even more energized for their work. We talk about the value of the artist and how artists can learn to price their work at a fair rate, how to gain the confidence and know-how to demand the compensation that you deserve. We talk about the importance of traditional art in an increasingly digital world, and how to be honest with yourself about the type of work that you want to do. So much more. It's really hard to choose the most valuable highlights from this episode because it was all fantastic. Please give it a listen and follow Autumn and Daniel on all the links in the show notes. One bit of housekeeping news, I am launching a Kickstarter on January 31st. Please check out the link in the show notes, sign up to get notifications. The proceeds from that project will help fund this content and keep it going in the future. Okay, no more delay, here's the interview. This is the official restarting of the podcast. Thank
fault.
you. No, man. Don't worry about it. The pleasure is ours having you guys here. It's wonderful that you've taken the time. We're very honored by your presence. Let's start with some quick introductory material. Daniel, maybe you can start. Tell us a little bit about your history, how you got into art, and a little bit about where you're at now.
History part is probably pretty quick. I've been drawing since I was a little baby. Basically, as soon as I could draw, I was drawing, and I kind of never stopped, though I went through various interests from wanting to do comics to animation to book covers and stuff when I discovered Frazetta's work. And then kind of back to animation on the computer side, which I initially went to school for and did a 2-year degree in computer animation, and then decided, no, I like drawing on paper a lot more, and went back to school for illustration, where I went to Art Center, College of Design, and toward the end of that, got into being a sketch artist for advertising, for entertainment advertising. And that was at the beginning of 2008. And I've been doing that ever since.
Very cool, man. Autumn, can you follow that up? Same question.
Yeah. So, used to be a gigolo. And then about a year ago, I decided I was going to get into doing art. And it just took off. It was, it was really, it was my calling. I kid. My story is actually pretty similar to Daniel's, where I met my stepfather when I was 2.5, 3, somewhere in there. And he said that when he met me, I had a crayon in my hand. So did drawing from then, found all sorts of art and just wanted to draw comics. And learned to draw initially from comics because I was really bad at math. So never really had art classes because of it. And so I was self-taught by looking at Frazetta and other artists. And then got out of high school, moved to Santa Barbara and started taking junior college art classes through the push of a family friend, and then stayed there for 7 years at a junior college. There's a reason behind it, but I was there for 7 years and studied literally everything under the sun, and decided that I wanted to be an animator, and started to try and get into Cal Arts, and failed miserably at getting into Cal Arts for one reason or another. Big long stories there. And finally took the advice of one of my professors, who every time I said, I want to get into Cal Arts, he would say, no, you don't. Like, no, I want to be an animator. No, you don't. Like, no, I want to be. He's like, go to Art Center. It's your speed. Like, no, I want to go to Cal Arts. And finally applied to Art Center, got in. And that was the precursor to the career. Then the career was, got out, started freelancing, took on a freelance job at Nickelodeon, did that for 3 years, and then moved on and started doing sketching for entertainment advertising, very similar to Daniel. And lo and behold, we work together now.
So how long have you known each other?
Since Art Center, first term at Art Center, which was September of 2003. So it's been a minute.
You guys seem
Couple
cut.
of years.
Yeah, you guys seem cut from the same cloth. At one point, I was tempted to think you guys were even related. I think I might have even asked Autumn at one point if you guys were brothers.
I mean, we're brothers. It's the brothers that you choose, right?
Yeah, you guys even like look alike. It's cool. It's great. It's, you know, it shows
I did notice this is very bearded podcast.
Yes. At least we all have that in common. That is our continuity right there.
Yeah, this is my lazy look for the winter. You can go back to the podcast history and see how fast it's grown.
We're all super hip and trendy. That's what it is. We're on the cutting edge here.
No, we are all trying to reshape the structure of our faces with facial hair that is kind and forgiving.
Well, Autumn, maybe to you first, and then to Daniel. What you guys both work at the same company now, right? Can you guys talk a little bit about what your respective roles are at that company?
Sure, I can tell you, but I'm gonna have to come by and kill you later.
We'll talk later.
Cool. I'll have my machine call your machine, and they'll figure it out. Our respective roles. Well, Daniel is my superior, and he has me do everything.
Daniel gets drunk and
Liquid lunch? I think so. Yeah. No. We are both. He is the head of the illustration department. I am the co-head of the illustration department. What that ultimately means is that when one or the other of us is locked into a project because projects require certain hands, right? Certain styles, certain abilities. So I'll try and take off as much of the workload as possible from him. So it's basically like I'm his support structure. I cup him gently and let him do his creative work.
Yeah, because when we get locked into a project, or say if I'm out of town or if Autumn's out of town, you know, there's still the administrative side to handle too, like interfacing between our department and account executives and art directors and creative directors, right? So there's a bit of the admin side of having to kind of schedule things according to the sort of assets that we have available to work on, whether it's illustration projects or sketch projects, you know, and all that stuff. So kind of when you get locked in, which usually entails doing some kind of a finished illustrated poster, you know, that can be pretty demanding, because you'll have a ton of revisions really quickly. And so you don't really have time to say, oh, hang on, well, I got this meeting to go to, you know, because literally the client will be like, hey, it'll be 2 p.m. and the client needs a revision by the end of the day, and which might be repainting a couple of faces or who knows, whatever it is. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's more involved. And so that's where if we're kind of locked in on a project, then it helps to have somebody that can go to those meetings and ask the right questions for upcoming projects, so that we kind of know how to handle all of it.
So do you guys have like a team of artists that you're working with, like junior artists that work in the same department?
Yeah.
Or?
I would say one is a senior artist and one is mid-level at this point. He was a junior, but he has since graduated.
Yeah, that guy's been working his ass off to graduate too. He's just crushing it.
We had a third artist as well, but she kind of moved out of town long before all this lockdown craziness happened.
So now there's an opening?
Uh-huh.
Oh man, I wish. Hiring freeze currently.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you guys still get to?
We were kind of putting the feelers out there for a little bit to try and find somebody, and we were talking to a couple of other sketch artists / illustrators that we know in Los Angeles, and it's a tough sell to go full time in this industry.
Yeah.
Because of kind of as a freelance sketch artist, there is a freedom afforded you to, it's in the name of the title, right? Free. So you if you're as a freelancer, you can say, oh no, can't take a job, I'm booked, and then sit on your couch all day and pick your nose, or try and improve on personal projects or any number of things that you can't do if you're doing a full-time job Monday through Friday, 9 to 6 p.m. So getting somebody to commit to that was a challenge, and then that window just closed. So
once the pandemic hit, it's like, and for us, the bulk of the work, we're talking about film productions, right? And of course, all that stuff had to stop. So luckily video games, animation, and some projects that were far enough along kept going. And so, like we can keep doing our thing, but it is kind of like, okay, we can't bring on new people right now, until it gets to the point again where we're getting so much work in that it's like, okay, look, the 4 of us can't do all of it.
The other thing is, LA is a pretty high cost of living area. Are you guys able to give salaries that lure people in, or is that also a fighting point? Because I know historically artists aren't paid very much anyway.
Yeah, no, I think the benefit of where we're at, the agency that we're at, which is called Bond, they hold a lot of stock in skills. And so if you're good, they want you. And so I think they do a good job. And LA is expensive, and to a degree, obviously there's no way around that, but the upside is if you're good and you push yourself, they recognize it.
They're fair to their talent for sure. That being said, you still can't afford a house in LA. Because ain't nobody can afford a house in LA unless you bought it 30 years ago.
Same
unless you want to pay like $1.5 million for like a little 2-bedroom.
That's the West Coast in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, these days pretty much. So that's encouraging to hear, because it's sort of like the larger studios that have the sort of the bigger reputations that people sort of look to as the pinnacles, but then those studios also seem heavy with the rumors of not being paid very well, or being kind of shuffled around very frequently, or maybe just laid off at a moment's notice anyway, and not always being treated well. And so it's always nice to kind of like put out that reminder that, like, well, there's other options where you can get paid well, get treated well, work with people that are going to appreciate what you're doing.
Honestly, there are 2 places in LA that I would have taken a full-time position, and luckily I got a full-time position at the one place that I really want to be. The people that we work with are amazing. The talent is amazing. Everybody loves and cares for each other. It's definitely one of those us against the world, trying to create some amazing art and make it art, So it's definitely it's one of those places. It's a 1 in a million kind of place to work, for sure.
It is different though, Joby, to your point with some of those larger studios. The difference is if you're talking whether it's Disney or ILM or they have that name and that clout to say, well, but then you get to put us on your resume, which is where they kind of get away with maybe not paying people as well, and because advertising, like sketch art or even illustration and advertising, is a bit of a niche sort of within the illustration world. Not a lot of people even know it's a thing, and I didn't find out it was a thing until I was ready to graduate from Art Center, and my buddy told me about it. He was like, "Oh, you should look at being a sketch artist for advertising," because I was going to go into concept art for games, and I had a job lined up, and then they closed that studio down about 2 months before I was graduating. So I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that's off the table." But I asked him, I was like, "Well, what's sketch art? I love sketching, so this sounds perfect. What the hell is it?" And he was like, "Oh, you just like draw like cool people like wearing awesome suits, smoking cigarettes, and you just draw them really fast." And I was like, "Oh, that," because he wanted to go into like the Mad Men type of advertising, And,
was that Moz?
Yeah, that was Moz.
Okay.
Yeah, he was like, he just
sounds like Moz.
Yeah, he thought it sounded like the coolest thing, and for me, I was like, that sounds awesome because I love sketching with pencils. And then I had an ad agency show up to the grad show, but they did specifically video game advertising. So then they asked, like, "Have you ever thought about being a sketch artist?" And it's like, "Funny you should say that. Yes, I have, but I don't know anyone in advertising." So
shout out to Eisenberg.
Yeah, that was the Eisenberg group in Pasadena. And 3 weeks later, they'd called me up, and they had a couple artists bail on them. So they're like, "Hey, it's a good time to get you in." And they brought me in, and just sketching on paper with like 2B pencils at the time. I've since changed my technique, but I was just sketching ideas for video game covers at the time for Darksiders, actually. Darksiders.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was the first one. That was the first ad project I worked on.
Wow, that's cool.
So it's kind of like live concept art.
Kind of, yeah. Like, and it's but concept in terms of the actual concept for the piece. You're not You're not doing character design and that kind of stuff.
Sometimes you are. Sometimes you are.
Occasionally, yeah. We've had to do that on the fly when a client brings us in on a project. Usually, this is on the video game side, where the game is not even far enough along to have finalized concepts done, but they want to start thinking about the way that they're going to roll out the entire campaign for the project. Right.
Yeah. So we just get told, "Hey, this is the project and this is the ideas. Go to it." And we're like, okay, here you go.
One of the Elder Scrolls games, which I forget which one it was, but they didn't even have any concept art at all. All I knew is that there was like an elf woman, like a half orc, and like a couple others. That's all the description I had. And so I was literally like doing character design on the fly on these concepts. So
half orcs in Elder Scrolls.
I think it was, but this was a specific character. This was a specific character.
Nah.
That's really interesting though, because I'm trying to imagine. So does that mean that it's just like, nope, and you're like, okay, I'll start again. Is there a lot of that?
I mean, sort of. They weren't nitpicking the characters, luckily. What they were really looking at was the composition and the
Concept.
narrative. Yeah, the
Mhm.
narrative behind the concept.
Yeah.
It was the same thing when I was doing cover concepts for the first Monster Hunter game. It was the same thing. We had no concept designs to work with at all. So I was just like, all right, crazy, cool warriors and dragons. Like,
I was so freaking jealous of Daniel in those days. Oh my God. I was like, you get to draw what?
Right. And so it's almost like the concept before the concept. Like,
kind of, but that's where, like, for both of us, for both Autumn and myself, when we come up against those kinds of projects, the fact that we were so interested in concept art initially when we were going through Art Center has been a huge boon to us. The fact that we can concept design on the fly.
mhm.
Yeah.
And
I
make the
think I
stuff
actually
look
ended
pretty
up
good,
doing a
you
lot
know?
more concept design stuff in school than Daniel did. Like
Yeah.
at a certain point, Daniel shifted gears and was like, "Oh yeah,
Painting.
painting." Because when I get out into the professional world, I'm not going to be able to paint. So let me hit these teachers that I know I'll have to pay thousands of dollars later to go to one of their workshops.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because I
he
figured I
made that choice.
could learn to do digital on the job, but on the job in the entertainment world, I wasn't going to learn to do watercolor or oils or anything like that. So I was like, I want to know how to do that. So
Yeah.
I think it was my last year and a half or 2 years at Art Center that I focused predominantly on traditional art.
But it's not something I was shocked to find out that you guys do sketches at the start of for your projects, because when I watch your streams, Daniel's painting this awesome lady with a tiger, a couple panthers, and Autumn is doing D&D character art, and this is like rendering, finishing all this stuff. But
Yeah.
your jobs are the sketching part. So
Right.
do you feel like you're doing the personal work just so that you don't get rusty on that finishing portions, or?
Yes, I mean, yes, but at the same time, I would say it's mostly so we don't get rusty, but it's not necessarily toward the finishing stuff, because we're doing enough of that I think, I mean, you can get a bit rusty for sure, and you need to keep up on that stuff. But I think for us, since we both have interests in art outside of work, just in terms of subject matter and narrative, right? Like, if you think about entertainment key art, it's very iconic, right? Iconic first, narrative second or third. But if you love storytelling, then you want to kind of keep up on that narrative type of illustration as well.
Or just other types of illustration. It's
Yeah.
it's such a big playground. There's so much there. That's why you go to my stream, and when somebody raids, I pop up what they may see when they show up, and it may be a spooky illustration, it may be something dark, it may be something light, it may be something whimsical, it may be pixel art, it may be all these things, and those are all the avenues that I just choose to continue to investigate in my off time, and it has always been that way. It's always been this like, okay, I like this thing, but I need to go and do this thing now, because otherwise I'm just going to stagnate in that one area. So really, streams for me are just running around the playground and spinning around on the spinny thing so much that I fall off and then go and play on something else,
Just to dwell a little bit more on the nature of your guys' job description, because I'm kind of wrapping my mind around it. Like,
Sure.
literally just sketching, and then then you hand the ideas off to then be taken to the next level of refinement and be realized and more finished, or you guys are doing that as well? Where do things go from your hands?
Generally, it's a presentation. So we'll do a full sketch presentation, and that will go to the client, and then the client looks over everything and sends back that yes, couple of things. It can either be, yeah, we really like the direction, let's go do a photo shoot with all of the talent and then start building these posters based on some of those sketches. Or it can be, let's do some more investigations around this idea, and this idea. And then we get another round of sketches and we go to it and help refine it. And then sometimes we end up going 4 or 5 rounds of sketches. But then the next step is for these photo shoots to happen. The talent comes in and they do all these different poses based on what we've sketched. And then all of those images go back to the art director who initially had that idea, and that art director puts together the poster. So basically it goes, art director has idea. Art director gives idea to us. We execute in a way that sells it to the client. And then it comes back to the art director finishes poster, everybody smiles, we get paid.
Art director's finished poster then goes to the finishing department to fine-tune every little pore in the skin and all the flyaways in the hair. Like, they get into the nitty-gritty, and then client approves it and it goes to print.
If you are a illustrator who loves that super, like, getting into every hair and like drawing every hair, and you can do it over photos or something, look into being a finishing illustrator, because that is your jam right there. You will get time to just be like, no, that pore needs to be there, and a little bit of highlight there, and then that pore needs to be there. And so it's definitely, if you're good in Photoshop and that's your jam, go for it.
And so what happens basically is we'll present in one round of sketches, like usually around 30 concepts, right? That we need to get sketched in usually 4 or 5 days, right? Which is why we'll have multiple sketch artists working on a presentation. But that's where you'll have 5, 6, 7 art directors throwing in concepts, right? Because for one person to come up with 30 concepts and execute them in like 4 or 5 days is just it's not really going to happen, right? And what would also happen is you would only get one mode of ideation, right? One style of idea. So you have multiple art directors throwing in ideas, and then we're all kind of executing these sketches, you know. And we can throw in our own ideas too if we want. Like, they're always open to that.
That's what really taught me that art directors are badass.
Yeah.
When they come to us and go, hey, throw in an idea, and I spend like 5 hours going, I
know, right? Well, and we're approaching it from like the painter's standpoint,
right.
You know, so we're not just thinking about just the concept. We start thinking about, well, but this concept would be really good for this style of painting. This concept. So we just start oscillating between like stuff that doesn't really matter yet, but it's hard not to when you're thinking about something that you would execute yourself as a finish. You know, like it's a little.
It's just the concepting phase is so hard.
It is.
I mean, you know, we can sit down and be like, okay, do the 3/4 over the shoulder, that whole thing. You know,
I've never seen
all those,
that idea before.
Never, not once. That's actually, we have a name for it in our circles. We call it the Unforgiven, because that was the one with Clint Eastwood, right?
Right.
That was like the iconic one. So.
Yeah.
So you just reference that.
In other fields, there's a traveling staff salesman, and it's the little guy that's like in the landscape with the staff, and he's like, here I come to conquer this castle by myself. And anyway, it's interesting to hear about like all of these tiers just for like one piece. It's like this guy, then this guy, then this guy, then this guy, and they all somehow stack together and combine to make a coherent thing. It's kind of hard to imagine that so many hands can get put into one project. I'm sure it does go haywire at some points, but more often than not, I imagine, you know, you got a good team working together, and it
shout out to the people that keep it all in order.
Because it's not you.
Like,
leave me alone, I'm drawing.
Creative directors and account executives, they're the ones that kind of really sort of steer the ship, because the account executives are interfacing with the client,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So-
with the film studio or game studio or TV studio.
So last week we were talking to somebody, to an artist who had been in a position like that, where he was sort of
Stumpy.
like within one of those layers, yeah.
Mhm.
And his role was so super specific and undeviatable. Is that a word? Anyway,
Unwavering.
It is now.
Unwavering. Thank you so much.
Unwavering.
And he kind of
that
got
word.
burnt out on serving in that one very specific role. Does that ever pop up for you guys, or do you see it happen? And do you have any sort of like words of wisdom for how to combat that?
I mean, for
Quit
me
your job.
personally,
You'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
For me personally, that's one of the main things that has kept me in advertising, is the fact that one, we never know what kind of project is going to pop over our desks, right? Like, it might be a romantic comedy, it might be an action, it might be a fantasy, it might be a sci-fi. So in terms of subject matter, we get to draw everything, you know.
Literally.
Yeah. And then on top of that, we've had many occasion to use all kinds of mediums, you know. I've done ink drawings, ink washes that have ended up in posters. I've done them for concepts. We've done charcoal. We've done, I know I've done some watercolors
Vector.
for concepts. I don't do vector. I can open Illustrator.
I did vector. You remember?
I know you.
I know what the
you.
icon
Remember
looks like.
Chosen? So when he said everything, and I thought back to one of the first projects that I worked on at Bond, this one called Chosen, that I ended up with. He did the sketch, I did the finish, and it went to the client along with some unmentionable, amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
So as you guys are, oh, sorry, I don't want to cut you off. If you
Oh
still
no,
had
no, I was
another.
just gonna say I've even done some oil painting for it. So like literally like done
Okay.
everything.
Now, that sounds cool in the game, but then I'm thinking, while you're talking, of the guy that's doing the hair flyaways and the skin pores and, you know, fingernail dirt and stuff, and I can maybe put myself in his position and think, oh my god, I gotta do more, like, hair flyaways.
You know what's
funny though is that's a mentality that's like for people who love doing that kind of like OCD art, you know, that very like, they love getting into that stuff. Because on top of that, what they're also doing is they'll finesse the lighting and the color palette a bit, you know, with a little more of, say, a painter or illustrator's eye, you know. And if, like, yes, there's a nitty-gritty aspect to what the finishers do, but I think there is still an artistic aspect, and it speaks to a certain type of mentality, you know. I mean, you look at some of those artists. Who's the guy? Is it Royo? Is it Louis Royo who does those like super detailed paintings? But like traditional paintings and like crazy detailed. So like that kind of mentality, I think, would love doing that stuff. I love sketching, so I like the looser kind of art, but you know.
So with that in mind, oh no, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to interject back on the whole, you know, do you ever find yourself tired of it? What he says is absolutely true. There's enough broad variance in it to continue to be interesting, but I think part of that is the work environment that's fostered where we are. So as a sketch artist, if you're a freelancer, you are I don't want to say a wrist, but you are there for a job. You're there to come in and execute the ideas, and occasionally you'll be asked, hey, can you throw in some ideas and help us out on this one? We're a little crunched for time. And you're not going to get those, hey, do this in oil, and hey, do this in acrylic. And there's at Bond, they have recognized that we have a skill set that goes beyond being sketch artists and beyond being just like digital illustrators, and that they afford us the creative freedom to flex in that way, and that is part of what makes that job so valuable to me. Is that they recognize that, and it took kind of us proving ourselves over a number of years, being like, hey, check out this thing that I did after hours, which was an oil painting, and then the right people saw it and said, hey, we've got this client that wants this thing. Have you thought about maybe doing it in this style? And that gave us the opportunity to kind of add that to our repertoire of stuff we can do. And they will, I mean, given the right timelines on projects, and some of them are pretty short, they will allow us to do those sorts of things when budgets and the timelines allow it. And that's really what keeps that job so fresh, and the mentality of waking up, sitting in traffic, and going to this job it's a small burden compared to other things,
Oh, man, you guys are making it really difficult to dig up some dirt here. Is there anything that you don't like about your job? This is like...
I mean, I think one thing that Autumn touched on, and it's not to say that like we don't like it, because it's one of the pluses, I think, that keeps it interesting, but can be one of the cons, is the tight timelines.
Okay.
That gets tricky, especially when you get projects just stacking up. Then it's, from the artist standpoint, you'll often see those like little statistics or whatever that's like, on the average workday, most people are only productive like 3 or 4 hours out of an 8-hour day. No, we do like we do a 10-hour day.
It's not a thing.
Often 9 to 10-hour day usually, and we break for like 20 minutes for lunch. It's not to say that we can't take more breaks. We could, but we're usually just like sketching.
Yeah.
And if I only had a 4-hour productive time in my day, we'd never meet our deadlines. We would never meet our deadlines.
Yeah.
So we are productively sketching or illustrating for like a good 8 to 9 hours a day.
Do you have any clients that just drive you mad and wish they would stop hiring you? Like,
Can't tell you that.
Nope.
Okay. Let me put it a different way. Do clients ever?
Here's the
stretch?
thing. Here's the thing. Even if we had clients like that, I wouldn't say it, because, well, it's not just my job that's on the line.
Who might be listening.
It's not my job that's on the line. It's everybody at Bond, and I love those people.
Yeah. And realistically, I would still say no. Are there occasionally projects where it gets a little crazy and unrealistic? Yes. But I don't think that there is any client where it's like consistently a huge pain in the ass or anything like that to do.
And
the project.
luckily, they recognize. I mean, it's not like they come in and they're like, "Hey, we need this by such and such time," and there's no wiggle room. It's it's, "Hey, we need this by such and such time. Sorry, but we really need it. I got to meet my boss." And if they got to meet their boss, then we got to help them look good in front of their boss. And it's just making we are in the business of client pleasing. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, Moose, our evil plan to ruin these guys' career has been foiled. They're fucking bulletproof, man. Cammy Bo in the chat had an interesting question for you guys. What's the main concern of your future as far as creating art? I've heard that artists never really retire, but what obstacles do you see for yourselves and in the art field in general?
That's a great question, and one that I've honestly been thinking about a lot for the last, I would say, 2 or 3 years, because like I love advertising for now. It's not something I want to do forever, but it's a tough one when what you love doing, like I love painting. I love traditional, analog painting. But that's a tough one to find the right outlet for these days, right? Because where the outlets used to be, if you look at Frank Frazetta, right, who was a huge early influence for me, those outlets are no longer there for traditional painting because the work pipelines have changed, right? You could still do book covers, for sure, but most illustrations now in the commercial illustration world are done digitally because the work pipelines don't support working in analog paint, right? Because you're going to have to make changes right up until the last second, right up until they hit print, and you can't do that if you're working in oils, you know. Or say if you want to do a watercolor piece, you can't. You're like, well, I could repaint this whole thing.
The timelines are so short just because of the digital thing, and clients have grown so used to being able to say, "Hey, can you fix that like right there and move that over to there?" And you're like, "Wait a minute, move that. This is oil. I can paint another one and Photoshop them together for you."
But so if I'm thinking like long term, you know, it's like I love painting portraits and I love painting landscapes, even though I'm not good at them. But that's not what I would want to do necessarily, you know, like long term. But that's what kind of sells in galleries. But so what do you do if you like doing oil painted fantasy illustration? You know, what's the outlet for that if you still want to be able to make a living on those paintings beyond private collectors?
Right? Magic the Gathering, basically.
Right, which, you know, compared to the advertising budgets, Magic the Gathering, you know, it's not, you know, doesn't quite compare.
You pretty much have to rely on their secondary market where they have the Magic the Gathering Facebook group where you sell your paintings for $10,000 to $40,000 per painting there.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a tough one. That's why, like, that is a very good question. And I would say a tough one, at least for me to answer, because I think a lot of the things that I love doing are very much rooted in the traditional art. But at the same time, like, I love writing. I know Autumn loves writing too. You know, so there's some writing and storytelling in the distant future somewhere. Somewhere over I haven't gotten over that horizon yet, so I'm not sure where it is, but it'll be there.
There's definitely, I mean, there's a variety of projects that will fill my time and eventually take up almost all of my time once a certain threshold has been reached with the advertising stuff. And I don't know what that threshold is. I haven't really set it. It's not like I said, you know, I'm going to work for 10 years in advertising or 20 years in advertising, and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to do this and this. Given the way that the world used to be, it used to be like you found that job out of college and that job became your job. And then you got the white picket fence and you got the retirement and you got the pension and all that. That's not a thing anymore. But if you find a company that's willing to support you artistically and be there for you through your ups and downs in life, and you can stick with them through their ups and downs, then do it, right? And Bond is that company for me personally, and I feel like it's a solid foundation for where I will go artistically in the future, because not only is there the emotional support and financial support, but there's also the creative support and the creative freedom. So that being said, I get to continue to do the art daily at the work, and then push some of the other things on the side a little bit more, so that, you know, eventually if I get if we have a battle royale and our mid-level comes in and just fucking
it's fine,
just destroys me, and I have to step down in shame, then I have something to fall back on. But that's way into the future as far as I can tell. and I'll keep beating him down until he just stays down there.
Artistically speaking.
No, I'm just
Swords and knives and
absolutely. I've got my axe back there.
yeah, you guys have a duel like once a year. Muskets at dawn.
Yes.
I do have a question though. Are you guys allowed to do freelance work while you're working at that company, or is that strictly prohibited?
No, we
can
can
freelance.
freelance, just not for other ad agencies because that would be a conflict of interest. But outside of that, as long as it doesn't conflict with what Bond does, right? I've done freelance stuff. I've done some stuff for Dungeons and Dragons, for Upper Deck, Privateer Press, and some other stuff. But it's things that have nothing to do with what we do at Bond, you know. And the nice thing is that if we want to do some freelance work, we can kind of take it based on how fun the project might be. And not worry. I mean, we still, and I'm sure, you know, both Autumn and I would still try and drive that rate up a bit because, as you had said earlier, as we were talking, artists traditionally don't get paid that much these days. And so I always do my best to try and drive that rate up where I can, you know, even if it ends up being less than what my normal day rate would have been. I still push them to pay me more than what they first come to me with, you know?
Yes.
I generally just throw out my day rate, and if they say no, then I'm like, okay, bye.
Yeah, when you have
I don't have, it's not that it has to be a project that I really believe in. I have a friend and sadly, I've met a lot of people in Hollywood and a lot of people in different artistic like avenues like games and animation and all this stuff, but a lot of what they're talking about falls under the purview of what Bond does. So they'll come to me and be like, "Hey man, I got this movie coming out and I want you to do the poster." And I'm like, I can't do it. I'm like, "Hey, go talk to Bond." And they're like, "Bond's out of our range, man. They're top tier." And I'm like, I can't do it. I mean, and here's the thing. I'm pretty sure that if I talked to Bond and I said, "Hey, I want to do this movie poster. It's a friend of mine. I don't want a conflict of interest." There is no way that they would go with you guys because they're going to pay me like $1,000 to do this poster. And you wouldn't take that job anyway. Is it okay if I take this in my spare time? I'm pretty sure that they would be cool with it. I couldn't guarantee it, but I respectfully acquiesce most jobs to them. Whereas if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, can you do this thing?" I'm like, "Here's the contact at Bond, go talk to them." But the other stuff that falls outside of that, I always will shoot my day rate out to them. And most of the time they'll be like,
which is what you want.
They wanted to pay you like $5 per card for a sketch card.
And I was like,
Okay,
let me give you nobody I know's number.
You know that 4 steps of how to draw an owl? You'll get the first step and that's it.
Draw a circle.
But that does beg the question, though. We have a lot of people watching that aren't familiar with your industry. So what are reasonable rates for a day rate or for a poster? That's worth it.
I mean, well,
depends on your level.
Yeah. The poster rate is a huge range. That depends on the amount of experience that you have, more than anything. Even skills aside, you can have someone who's really good, but they're new to the industry. They're just not going to command the same rate as someone who might not even be as good, but they've been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah.
Day rates typically for sketch art, at least, because if you're brand new, you're not going to get into illustrating finished posters unless you're already an established illustrator somewhere else and they want specifically you to do it. Mm-hmm. But for sketching, you're generally looking at somewhere between $500 a day and $850 to $900 a day on the top end at this point. Some people that have been doing it like longer than I've been alive are more expensive than that, but rightfully so. They've earned it.
But they're also top tier talent.
They're top tier, but at the same time, they're priced out of a lot of jobs. A lot of jobs just can't can't afford that kind of a day rate. And $850, I would say, is
Pushing
these
it.
days pretty much the top day rate. But if we know a couple, at least I think a couple of people that are at that day rate, and they are working a lot.
Yeah.
Almost
full time.
Almost
As full time as they want to be for the most part.
Yeah.
At least prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
Checking in with them occasionally here and there during the pandemic and being like, hey, can we get some coverage from you?
Yeah.
They're still busy. So
yeah, they're still booked.
So don't know I don't know how frequent that is. It might be, so it might be that because it is advertising and it's not like these studios go to one agency. They go to multiple agencies and have them all pitch on the same project, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
So it may be that one agency grabbed them before we did, but it's the same project, and then it all is like everybody gets busy at the same time, right?
Yeah. And then occasionally maybe they're not busy, but they literally just worked on the same project for another agency, in which case they can't come work for us on the same project, because that's also a conflict of interest, right?
So we did have somebody in chat mention that they're a pro. They're pro. That's their name, pro. They got a job recently for €10,000 for a month and a half worth of work.
Yeah.
And doing some quick math, that's well below 500 day rate. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was freelance, and it was just before, it was maybe 3 or 4 months before I went full time. But so my last freelance rate was $850 a day, and my best month, I think, was about a $17,000 month.
Yes, I beat your ass.
Yeah, but in all fairness, I was teaching for part of that month.
Yeah, and I beat your ass and ended up with like a fucking ulcer. So because I was working like 3 jobs at once.
One of the reasons that I stopped teaching was because I ended up having to say no to too many jobs that just blew the teaching rate out of the water. As much as I loved teaching, it was just 1 day a week, but it was enough because you still have to go through the homework and grade it and critique and all that stuff. But I was just like, I have student loans to pay, so I can't be saying no to weekend work, which for us means time and a half, right? Because we charge a weekend rate as freelancers. If they come to us on a Friday and they're like, hey, we need this walk-in Monday morning, it's like, well, okay, then instead of $850, you're paying me $1,100 or $1,200 a day to knock this out over the weekend,
So,
and of course, that's you only charge that if you're actually working the entire week and then in through the weekend on another project.
Yeah.
If you're working 7 days a week.
Yeah, if you're sitting around for 4 days during the week, then you're kind of a dick. If you're like, well, weekend rate then. But sometimes not entirely, because it is a good kind of line to draw in the sand, I think. Otherwise, people do get used to being like, oh, well, we can come to this person for last minute work at any time,
And it also gives you a chip to play with your freelance people, where you can say, oh, hey, this is weekend, I'm not going to charge you weekend rate on this, and they'll be like, oh, no, you can go ahead and charge it, and you'd be like, no, you come to me all the time, I'm just going to do this for you, we'll do it at the normal rate, and then that you give to them and they want to come back to you, right? So
and sometimes they do say like, no, don't even worry about it, we've got the budget on this project, like just bill us for your weekend rate.
This all sounds great, because I know for a lot of our community, they're like in the fantasy art business, and that usually means like somewhere in the area of $30 an hour to $60 an hour.
Yeah.
And the numbers you're saying are significantly higher than that. So I guess your industry pays a whole lot better because there's a whole lot more money in it.
I want to qualify this because it's really important, and I had to learn this lesson. You have to bring that rate to the table. You have to be that good. And if you don't, you are not going to be able to charge that rate, because people won't call you back. So if you are charging $850, be worth $850. If you are charging a weekend rate, be worth a weekend rate. So
How do you
like,
know when
yes,
you're worth
you can-
850?
when you keep getting called back.
Yeah.
I had thought about this last night because we were you had sent me the questions. The way that you know when it's time to up your rate is when you are consistently saying no to people.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because you are already on a project. If you are getting called weekly by 4 different people and they're saying, "Hey, are you available?" And this is how I raised my rate from 600 to 850 within a year and a half, is I was consistently getting called, and I realized that I could keep bumping the rate on projects. And so I bumped the rate a little bit, told my agent
Is that what she
that
was?
I don't know what she was, man. She was the person that was like, "Hey, do you got any samples of the same shit you sent me 10 times?" Agent. And I told her that with your cut, I need to be at this rate. And eventually that rate was just 850. And so she would charge the people that I was going out to like $1,000, and I would be getting 850.
No.
And that was the day. But I then had to come in and be worth $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
Holy crap, that is some pressure.
No pressure.
That was serious pressure. There were days where I was like, I would go and I would talk to the project manager, just be like, "I'm glad that you're my friend because I feel like I failed you today, and I want to make sure that you're getting your money's worth. So if you want me to do some more weekend work on this, I'll do it for free. Because I stumbled today. I just was having a not good day sketching, and sorry."
That's the other side of it too, is that the rates are good in what we do in advertising. They have budgets. You don't get the, say, notoriety that you might get in some of the other industries, because most of what we do, nobody ever sees,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
95% of what I do at work, nobody will ever see it.
Yeah.
And
Even as a freelancer, I had to
yeah.
call any of the
Yeah.
agencies and be like, "Hey, I saw that this stuff went live from a year ago when we were sketching. Is it okay if I put out there that I worked on it?" And then they would have to okay each individual one, because
With the
oftentimes with the client, because oftentimes clients will circle back on things.
Yeah.
So you can put in 30 sketches and they go with number 10, but then later on for their home entertainment stuff, they go back to those sketches and they go, "Hey, we had these and we have the resources. Can you do this one as a home entertainment type of thing, or as a streaming thing, or that sort of thing?" So they would not unlock those sketches for us to show. So, 10 years worth of work, and I think I can show maybe 5 to 10 sketches.
Yeah. And
Wow.
usually we can only show sketches. The only thing we would ever get permission to show would be sketches that directly relate to whatever the final image ended up being. Because, these days with social media and stuff, if I were to put out other sketches that didn't go to final, you're going to have some weird dude comment and being like, "This should have been the finished poster. Why did they go with the other one?" Because they don't have the knowledge, of the ins and outs of the industry to understand why the studio might have gone with the one that they did. So instead, they just start a big, shitstorm of like, "This should have been blah blah blah," and then the studio gets a bunch of blowback, and so that's why typically, if it's not something that went to finish, they will not okay it to be shown.
I have to say, I've been that guy, but in a more good-hearted way.
Sure.
I went to a studio and visited them, and I saw all the concept art they had on the walls, and I'm like, "This is
Yeah.
all awesome. I want to see all of this in the game." And
Yeah.
they were like, "It's expensive to put all that stuff in the game," so we picked one.
Yeah. And then the other side is, with the potentially high day rates in advertising, is largely due to the fact that we have to be on point like 98% of the time, right? So if I do 100 sketches, if 2 of them are kind of like, they got away from me a little bit, that's fine. But in most other industries, you don't have that kind of like triage rate, like you can get away with having some off days here and there because you have longer timelines to work it out. We don't. We'll have to knock out anywhere from 3 to 5 drawings in a day, and we don't have the time to go back and redo any of them. We can tweak them a little bit, but we don't have the time to go back and redo them. So it's like we have to be on point, you know? And so that's where it's a very high octane industry. You know, I've hit up people where I'll look on ArtStation when we have kind of been looking to maybe expand the team a bit. And I'll look at people who have beautiful sketches, right? And I'm like, dude, these are awesome. You know, I'll hit them up and ask them like, how long did this piece take you? And they're like, oh yeah, I only spent about a day on that. I'm like, cool. Can you do 5 of them in a day? Like, can you increase your output by 500%? You know, and so
how often do they say yes, Daniel?
Never. Never.
So this sounds like a little bit of like you would expect from like Paul Richards or someone.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, that's the hard part is then you get some of the people that can do it, but maybe they've already got something good going and they're not looking to like get into entertainment, like advertising, getting into being a sketch artist. They're like already just kind of doing their own thing and you know, have some good notoriety doing that.
But
you know.
For just to circle back to the prices, you said 500 to 850. Would
Right.
500 be like bottom tier, like you're just starting and that's acceptable, or
more
No.
or less? I mean,
I disagree. I think bottom tier is going to be, and this is because it's probably right now it's probably going to be like 350, 400. And that's green. That's super green, coming in, not knowing what you're doing.
When I first started doing sketch art, I had no idea what the potential for the day rates were. I had no idea because I didn't have anyone I could talk to about it. And they hired me for $35 an hour, right? And that was when I was doing. I was right out of school. Granted, I'd been freelancing through school, but I hadn't been doing any advertising stuff. Luckily, I sat right next to a super veteran who'd been doing it since like 1976 or something, right? So like 4 years before I was born. And so at least I got to pick his brain a bit and see how he was doing his stuff. And then I think like 3 weeks later, the agency called me back because the client liked my sketches more. I think because I had a little more of a modern style of sketching, right? Because I was coming from having an interest in concept art and stuff like that. And then I'd gone out to lunch with a few people on the team, including the girl who was kind of in charge of bringing in freelancers and stuff. And she maybe had a couple too many beers and let slip that his day rate was $1,500 a day, flat. There was no hourly. $1,500 a day for him to walk through the door.
I'm just gonna go crawl back in my coffin now.
Right?
Seriously,
no,
right?
I was like, I'm sorry. What? How much? How? $1,500 a day. I was like, okay. Then overnight, the next day, I came back in and I doubled my rate with them, and nobody batted an eye.
There you go.
So literally overnight, went from 35 an hour to 70 an hour,
which is pretty much what happened with me.
Yeah.
Also, but basically because I cut the line and Daniel was busy and couldn't take the job. And he was like, call my buddy Autumn. Autumn does that whimsical shit. And so I got brought into Eisenberg and they were like, what's your day rate? And I was like, 600.
They were like, okay.
Advertising.
All right.
making me think about some things here. You guys have both been talking about this as pretty high paced, high octane, I think is your exact words.
Yeah.
So Visual Nomad in the chat wants to know, how has the pace affected your physical and mental health? And Don Lee with the follow-up to that. Daniel, can you give us a percentage of the number of gray hairs in your beard that are derived directly from your work?
That's such a good question because I saw a picture literally from 2 years ago and my beard was black.
Okay. Wow.
Now,
Well, we can
granted,
chalk that up to 2020.
I respectfully
Granted,
disagree.
my
That
dad-
camera was probably the settings were
No,
a
I
little
know.
off. He
I
had more gray
I had
hair than that.
some gray, but not nearly what I do now. But on the other side, my dad had gone completely silver by the time he was my age. So,
Mm.
but I'm half Indian, so I get the dark hair from my mom. And
Dot,
so,
not feather.
yeah. And so up here I'm dark, but up here clearly more my dad's genetics. It is. I mean, it depends. It can be super stressful. I think it depends on how you handle it. For me, sketching is a meditation for me. So even like when I'm really busy, there is a calm focus for me while I'm actually drawing. What starts to stress me out is when I'm not drawing as much and I have to jump into meetings and get on phone calls and I'm not doing art. When I'm doing art, even when it's super fast paced, I'm a lot more calm.
But I think that's part of that support structure that he and I have developed. So
Yeah.
when I can, I look over at him and I'm like, I got this one, dude. And I'll go and I'll field it just so that he can keep doing, so he doesn't get as stressed out. And the same thing, vice versa. Daniel will do that for me.
Yeah.
So,
The
and I don't think I
physical-
meditate quite as much as he does during sketching. I'm like, fuck, this sucks. What am I doing? I'm a fucking faker. I quit.
There are definitely, like, there can be physical ramifications. I was let's see, that was 2014, so I was 34 when I went full time, which of course, for any men out there that are above 35, we all know how the metabolism changes.
Oh yeah.
And so it was this combo of like all of a sudden starting a full-time job where I was now sitting a whole lot more than I was when I was freelance, and my metabolism changing, and that snuck up on me a bit, and I've had to battle to kind of get back, to my trim, beach ready, whatever.
I think
I love my rowing machine.
on a physical level, I went through. So I came junior college. I had a job where I was working full time as well as going to school in a recording studio as an audio engineer and a web developer for some of the clients there. And I was sitting nonstop. That was from like 24 to 28, and not the years. That's my actual age. Not 1924 to 1928.
Oh, really? You're not 170?
Are you sure? Because there's no gray there. And I actually had that experience at that age where I suddenly looked down and I was 40 pounds heavier. And I was like, what the, huh? And so now when I went into this job where I was sitting more, I actually was able to foresee the consequences and combat that in a way that was healthy and beneficial and kept me moving, not only physically, but kept me svelte, kept me limber. And some of the things that I do are stretching daily, exercising 3 times a week at the gym, stretching after the gym, getting cardio at the gym. Prior to COVID has changed a lot of that, and I do my best to continue to do that sort of thing, as well as doing exercises to combat this movement, right? This shoulder thing, because as artists, that shoulder thing is going to kick your ass if you don't pay attention to it and do some exercises to help you with your posture, get your shoulders back and down, and work it in the opposite direction and all that. So I daily still during COVID have been doing shoulder exercises to help combat that, because I realized that without the gym and without the heavy weight to keep that mass that helps to combat this sitting posture, I'm going to have to be very cognizant of what my shoulders are doing, because that is right up here is kind of the hinge for the livelihood. And if this goes bad, there's going to be this constant pain that's going to be making, like, I'll still draw because I'm never going to stop drawing. But if it gets so bad that I have to push through it on a daily basis, then it's going to make me not love something that I love. And that is, that's hell, right?
Yeah, we have some friends who have gotten into the habit throughout their entire life of drawing with their wrists and their fingers, and are now experiencing in their low to mid 30s joint pain, arthritis, or tendonitis, and it's limiting their ability to work at all. So it's something to keep. It's the better, the sooner the better, right?
Ergonomics and drawing in a proper posture are super, super, super important to your longevity. And so when I draw like, you know, I don't know if you know the Aeron chair, but I draw with it tilted all the way forward. So it's almost that way. So I'm upright the entire time, and my arm is at a perfect 90-degree angle, and I'm drawing from the shoulder when I draw. Even when I'm standing here working on my Cintiq during a stream, I'm still drawing at a 90-degree angle.
Mm-hmm. Anytime
that's because go ahead.
I was going to say anytime.
No, go ahead.
No, I love you more.
So what I was going to say.
Anytime somebody asks me, how do I get better at drawing, before I even go into anything like about actually drawing pictures, I'll talk about ergonomics and how your body moves and how your shoulder is. That's all I wanted to say, man.
It's interesting because I, at work, sat in a really weird position for a while, and then my neck started hurting, and I was like, wait, what is going on? Everything is the same. And then I noticed that I was like sitting with one leg up, and I just took that leg and I put my foot flat on the ground, and within a week I was better.
Yeah. So, which evens out your hips which straightens your spine, and and also pressure. I've noticed a lot of people will draw with a heavier hand. And what happens is
I feel attacked. I fucking feel attacked.
But that constant flexing and unflexing of the hand and the forearms will cause a lot of problems. And that's where a lot of people, they're like, oh, I can't draw for more than like 4 hours in the day because then my hand starts to hurt. And for me, I can draw I've done 14-hour days drawing, and my hand never hurts, because more than anything, I use the weight of my hand and my arm to get more pressure. I'm not doing it by pushing and digging in really hard. So if I'm drawing with pencil, it probably doesn't matter for people who are only listening to this, but for anyone watching, like, I have the pencil held way back here, right? We can maybe get the camera to focus possibly. But anyway, I'm way back here on the pencil. And if you drag that pencil along, you get a nice dark line because it's compounding on itself as it goes down the length of the lead.
Mm.
So you don't have to push really hard to get a dark line.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
especially, and that's in traditional, that's especially valuable. I wish there was some equivalent to that, or they could develop some equivalent to that in
for the Cintiq.
Yeah, because people that are listening, if you want a visual for the position that Daniel's talking about, just like Google overhand grip drawing, and that's sort of like the more traditional style that you see artists drawing in, and that's a almost effortless way to draw and improves the ergonomics so much, and it makes me so sad that there really isn't a way around that in the digital realm.
With with the Cintiq, you can adjust the sensitivity.
Mm-hmm,
and that's what I did, is I made it more sensitive so that I can, when I need full pressure, I can just literally use the weight of my hand and my arm to get it. I don't need to push to get it, because that's the one time my hand would start to hurt, was when I was doing digital painting for 10 hours straight.
There you go.
Yeah, Huion still has they call it their curves rather than their pressure sensitivities, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And you can adjust the curve on your Cintiq within your Wacom settings. There's there's an actual curve that you can change as a normal Bezier curve and get it so that it's like Daniel says, where you just like you're basically just kind of limp holding your hand there and allowing your shoulder and your elbow to do all the work, right?
Yeah.
Like drawing from the shoulder. And
It
then
takes
just
more
drags across the
finesse on the
surface.
lighter pressure side. You have to learn that, and that takes practice for sure. But, art is all about finesse, isn't it? So we should
Fair
learn
enough.
that anyway.
Yeah. Well, if we can, maybe just briefly, before we move on to something else entirely, to come back to the professional side of things. How long have you guys been working at Bond?
Technically, I think we both started doing freelance work for them toward the end of 2013. And then
I was first.
Yeah. He started freelancing for them, and then I think a project came up that was a conflict of interest because he had already booked on it with another agency.
Was that Simpsons?
No, Friends with Better Lives.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so then he referred them to me, and so then I came in freelancing for them.
And then I was the redheaded stepchild after that. It was great.
And then I went full time with them May of 2014.
Okay.
And then we basically had Autumn there, like essentially permalance for like a year and a half.
It was so good.
It was because the thing with the permalance is that you're getting your freelance day rate and you're basically just coming there full time.
And you're getting paid weekly. Once you get into the role of it, right? So once you submit and it's a 30-day net and all that, but then you're submitting an invoice every week on a Friday and getting paid every week on a Friday. I was just like
So, within that, you guys have both covered a pretty wide range of occupations, I guess. I mean, it's all, you guys have both been working in commercial work for a long time. The sketching is, the sketch art has been a dominant theme, but I don't know, one of the things that I often think about is just like how many, we talked about this a little bit earlier, how many different levels and layers there are, in commercial work, just generally, whether it's advertising or not. And it can be overwhelming for some people, newer, younger, less experienced, one trying to find an avenue that they want to go down, or even becoming aware of the number of avenues, what the options are. Autumn, maybe you can start talking about it a little bit. What if you were talking to somebody, that was like really fresh into this, or coming freshly into not even just necessarily commercial artwork, but what are some good ways to go about trying to find out, well, okay, what are my options, and how can I go about figuring out what among those options is going to be appealing to me?
Wow, that's a tough one. Mainly because I never really had to go through a lot of that personally, right? The research that I did was initially in school. I wanted to be a concept designer, and I studied character and concept design in school. And I met some of the teachers who later became my friends and did all the things that were gearing me towards that avenue. And that was like, even back then, that was the hip thing to do. And that's why we have so many great concept artists right now, is because those people got out of school and hit the industry, and it just exploded into this amazing wellspring of talent, right? So for me, it was always right there. It was, once I got to school and saw what was happening, that's my focus, that's my direction, right? And then once I got out of that, it was, what's going to pay the bills? And I got some jobs that were paying the bills. And then I took something from a friend who used to work at Nickelodeon on Neopets. She got me an interview there, and I moved into that. And then when I was about to blow my brains out, because that was driving me absolutely batshit insane, Daniel was like, hey, have you maybe thought about not doing that and coming and doing sketch art? And then it was for me, it was kind of a natural transition. I didn't know anything about sketch art, once again, until Daniel took started doing it. But for me, it was a no-brainer because in my younger days, I used to run through the video store and look at the covers, and I realized that I would stop at all of these different covers that were like illustrated, right? And so that it was a big influence on me as an artist. And because I recognized that influence, I naturally said, yes, absolutely, sketch art is something that I want to do. So if I was to say to somebody younger to find the avenue that will help you to flourish, introspection. Take a look at the things that you have connected with, the things that have excited you, even if they seem obtuse, meaning tertiary to your everyday existence and you may not have thought of it. If it's something that is filtered into your day-to-day life and you appreciate it, take a look at it. See if there's an application in there for art. And if there's an application in there for art, then do a little bit of research and find out who the artist was, or where it was published through, or what the connection was, meaning who at what company hired that person to produce that thing. So who, as an example, a lot of people collect, what are the little bobblehead things? I always forget what they're called.
The little bobblehead things.
Pop something.
Yeah, pop, whatever. Yeah, Moose, you said it. I didn't hear
Pop
it.
something.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah. So those
Funko Pop.
Funko Pops. That's it. So a lot of people can collect those, right? And they're really into them. They love them. And so somebody somewhere along the line had to design that. And that somebody is at Funko, and that somebody got a job because they went to school for toy design or product design, and have a connection that has that Venn diagram that overlaps between product design and media. And they're like, hey, watch me design a product that includes Wolverine or includes Iron Man, and it's really cute and everybody's going to love it and we're going to make an ass ton of money, So find that person, find out what their path was, and try and mimic it. Keep in mind that just you can see between Daniel and I that even though we have similar paths and everything, the way that we arrived at this conclusion that we actually get to hang out and talk all day and do art and do all these things is we're vastly different kind of approaches to figuring these things out. So everybody has a different path. So when somebody is giving you advice, it may or may not be the path that's going to work for you. So in that introspection of like, oh, what's working for me, and what do I want to do with the rest of my life in art, and what is the thing that is going to keep me this motivated to keep doing it. Also keep in mind that even if you find that person and they give you that advice might not be good for you in your path. So you have to be introspective and determinate enough to know when to deviate from that advice to get further along on your path. End.
What I would add to that though is, and it was something that I think I had to really learn along the way, was to not just look at what speaks to you and what you love. Take a hard look at what you're actually good at. That to me will get you further, at least starting, right? If you're good at something, pursue that. Just because you like something doesn't mean you're going to be good at it, right? So like I loved character design, and to a degree I still love character design. I don't think I would be good at it for, say, a game company or a film studio, because I don't like the process that you have to go through, the type of work pipeline, the iterative design of doing 20 different options that are all subtly different. Like I can't stand that. So I don't think I would be good as a character designer unless I'm designing my own characters.
Hey, thanks for listening. We continue this conversation in part 2. You can get there immediately by clicking the thumbnail image on the bottom left of this video. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a great day.